documents have to be recorded and or discarded. And if they are discarded, the only way we do that, the hard copies, is we literally put them in burn bags that are identified specifically for that purpose. And there is a very exact courier system in which those burn bags are obtained and the material inside is destroyed.
So it's to get rid of the material, right?
Yes, sir.
And it looks like the annex that Mr. Durham in his investigation had was put into a burn bag by your predecessor, I assume, to be destroyed. Is that accurate?
Without getting into the stylization of the evidence, anything that's put in a burn bag is for purposes of destruction.
Do you find that interesting that the Durham annex was placed in a burn bag, that you would discover that when you took over as the head of the FBI?
We found a lot of information in a lot of burn bags.
Well, we appreciate you finding that. We'd like to know a little bit more about that, and we look forward to that information coming forward. And I appreciate the gentleman yielding. With that, we now recognize the gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing. Thank you, Director Patel, for being here today. I have a couple of questions regarding a terrible shooting that occurred in Colorado, a state, as you may know, that I represent. You've testified previously about, I think, what you would describe as your efforts to provide more information regarding the investigation with respect to the horrific assassination of Mr. Kirk. And so, in that same vein, I'm hoping you can provide this committee and my constituents in Colorado with some clarity.
Absolutely.
I think, as my colleagues know, in Evergreen, Colorado, Jefferson County, a county that I proudly represent, at Evergreen High School, a shooter ultimately injured. 2 students were praying for their swift recovery. There's an article here from Colorado Public Radio. The title is, quote, FBI was already investigating an account that may have been linked to the Evergreen shooter. You're familiar with the circumstances generally, Director, regarding this terrible tragedy.
Yes.
So my understanding from the public reporting is that an organization reported to the FBI in July of this year regarding, just reading here from the article, that the FBI opened an assessment into a social media account user whose identity was unknown and who was discussing the planning of a mass shooting with threats nonspecific in nature. This is the FBI's statement to the press. And that the FBI continued to work this assessment investigation to identify the name and location of the user up until September 10th, 2025, which was the day of the tragedy. Can you provide us some clarity on what were the impediments to finding, the account user, and maybe describe in greater detail the FBI's work in that regard?
Generally speaking, yes, because I know even though the shooter's deceased, the investigation we're not done.
Sure.
And so the impediments to finding these individuals, and you highlight a great point. We had 2 huge tragedies in the span of days in this country. The school shooting in Evergreen, Colorado being one of them. And proactively going out onto these social media platforms, which are so large, is our biggest impediment. And we need to rely on the service providers. There's actual legislation, I can't remember the name of it, that's up for renewal, which will, and I think at the end of the month, which gives service providers the ability to report that information in from their end without liability. We need that to continue, because while the FBI has so many people and the police are great at doing it, there's just too many platforms to cover down on.
Well, I appreciate that, Director Patel, and I think we're certainly, I'm interested in continuing this conversation, because I think the reporting suggests that there's a pattern, and that ultimately we want to make sure that law enforcement is able to prevent this kind of tragedy from happening in the future. I have a question. It's not meant as a gotcha question, so it just frame it there. But it is in regards to some reporting around a periodic transaction report that you had filed earlier, this year. So this is in July, pursuant to the ethical obligations as a senior executive official. You remember filing that in July?
Yes.
Yeah, so in that report, as best as I can surmise, you disclosed that you divested $100,000 or more in a variety of different stocks, which I presume was pursuant to the ethics agreement that you negotiated with the Department of Justice. In that same report, there's a disclosure regarding purchases of 2 different transactions. So between $15,000 to $50,000 in a national coffee house chain, and between $50,000 to $100,000 in a semiconductor company on May 9th and May 12th. Are those transactions that you're doing personally, or are these through a stockbroker, or are these transactions that you're handling yourself?
So how they happen is I submit proposals under DOJ guidance to say, hey, I would like to trade this or that, and they run their review, and the FBI runs a review, and then they come back and say yes or no, and then I make the transaction.
Is there a reason that you decided to make the purchases into those two companies?
Generally speaking, before I got this job, I was, trading stocks, but not a lot, like most people, and I just follow certain industries, and I thought they would be a good investment.
So the reason why I ask, right, because you had divested in other companies,
Yeah.
and I presume that wasn't because there were actual conflicts. It's just that you wanted to avoid an appearance of impropriety.
It was both.
Both, but not all of the companies were conflicts.
Whatever they
you
make
divested
the
from.
I don't make the call; they make the call.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess my point would be, the reason why I ask is, why I said it's not a gotcha question. I have for years led an effort here in Congress to try to ban members of Congress, senior executive officials, from trading stocks. And it's bipartisan in nature. We're working really hard to get that done, Republicans and Democrats. And you can understand, I think, given your role, given the nature of the position that you hold as the leader of the largest law enforcement agency in our country, that divesting entirely, not doing day trading now, I think would be something that would be in the interest of the American people. So I just would hope you would consider that, and that moving forward, that perhaps not purchasing stocks in individual companies, I would think would be something that would be worth pursuing.
Gentleman's time is...
I'm happy to give the witness an opportunity to answer.
Thank you. I'll work with you on it.
Gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Patel, for being here today. Newly declassified documents confirm that the intelligence community under President Barack Obama knowingly relied on unverified and fraudulent evidence to manufacture a false claim that Russia, in fact, meddled in the 2016 election. Is there more to be done to uncover the depths and origins of the Russian collusion hoax?
There is, and we're doing it.
Why should Americans still care about that, Director Patel?
Everybody wants to talk about a weaponized bureaucracy. And when we put out the facts about a weaponized bureaucracy, not because I said so, but because we found the FISA documents, because we found the 302s and the 1023s, then it becomes a political football. My job is to continue to put out that information and let the American public read it for themselves when I'm lawfully able to do so. And that's been my commitment on any subject, Russiagate or otherwise. Wherever the law allows me to do it, I will do it.
When I first came in 2020, the number one concern as I was doing town halls was the weaponization of the government against the American citizen. And so are there things that you're doing, structural reforms that implementing so that the FBI cannot be weaponized again, whether it's against President Trump or future elected presidents?
It shouldn't be weaponized against anyone. And the structural reform is simple. If you're going to go after a political individual or someone seeking political office, there has to be a grounded basis in law and fact to open up a criminal investigation. And if there's not, the investigation isn't even opened. And I've also gone back and reviewed other cases that were opened in prior administrations related to public officials. And we've closed a number of them because we felt that some of these actions were weaponized on either side of the aisle. I felt it wholly inappropriate for the FBI to be playing umpire and referee amongst these decision makers when there was no factual or legal basis to continue those investigations, so I shut them down.
And I think that's so desperately needed because we need to restore trust in law enforcement and certainly in the DOJ and the FBI so that the American people don't fear the very government that's supposed to protect them. And so thank you for doing that. On August 11th, you released to the committee documents concerning leak investigations that began in 2017. Do you believe these leaks were accidental or were they intentional in order to influence public opinion against President Trump?
When I can publicly make a final decision on that, either through a recommendation of charging that the DOJ makes or findings that I have, I'm able to do so, but they're still not complete.
Why did the FBI under Director Comey want to undermine the Trump administration?
I don't know, you'll have to ask him.
Think it might have been political? How will Director Comey be held accountable for his leaks and classified information concerning the Russian collusion hoax?
Well, anyone. Doesn't matter what you did before or what seat you were in. If you leak classified information, that's illegal. And we will investigate it fully. And if we can bring enough evidence to recommend charges to the Department of Justice, we will. But as you know, in these leak investigations, it's very difficult to produce the information necessary. We know leaks happen. They literally happen every week. It's one of the most destructive things to this country. Media receives classified information beneficial to one side or the other. I'm a fan of none of it, and I want to shut all of it down. And we need to bring some real cases to deter individuals from doing that, and that's my focus.
What was Comey's role in creating the ICA?
You know, speaking from my memory, as the head of the FBI, he was charged under then Director Brennan and Director Clapper and the other IC elements to come in with the NSA, CIA, FBI, and ODNI and put together a collection of information on how the information sort of surrounding Russiagate came together. So he represented the FBI in that.
Was former director of CIA, John Brennan, he's denied that the Steele dossier was used in creating the ICA. Is that true?
Well, it's, without commenting on him, the FISA has been released, and the dossier was in the FISA. It was in 4 FISAs. So I'll let the public decide.
Well, former Director Brennan actually denied repeatedly that he pushed for the Steele dossier to be included in the ICA. Is that true?
Did not. I'll let his testimony speak for itself, but then Deputy Director Andy McCabe also testified to the House Intelligence Committee, which has now been declassified, that were there no Steele dossier, there would have been no FISA.
Well, my time's getting close, but let me tell you this, sir, and well, my colleague from Texas said, thank you for the job you're doing. You're making the American people safe. You're restoring trust in these agencies that so many of us had lost trust in. So thank you for the work you're doing. That thin blue line, you're doing a fine job, and we want to let you know we appreciate it. Thank you. God bless you.
Lady from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director, for coming here today. And actually, thank you for your response to my colleague from New York who asked you earlier about violent extremism. And you said that there is violent extreme ideology on both sides. And I think you actually alluded to that same statement yesterday in the Senate. So I too have some questions I'd like to ask you. These are not gotcha questions, and just deny, please, what you deem to be false. So Dylan Roof, who followed white supremacist propaganda, murdered 9 black parishioners in Charleston in 2015. Do you deny this?
I'm sorry. Dylan Ruth? Roof, can you give me some more information?
You're head of the FBI, you probably know this. If you don't know, that's fine.
If you can give me a reminder, I've got a lot in front of me.
It was national news. Robert Bowers murdered 11 Jewish worshipers in Pittsburgh in 2018.
I do remember that.
And it was the deadliest anti-Semitic attack. So do you admit that that happened?
Yeah, I'm not saying the other thing didn't happen. I'm just asking for a little information.
Patrick Cruces, who posted a manifesto about a Hispanic invasion, walked into a Walmart in El Paso, Texas in 2019 and began firing. He murdered 23 people that day, and the youngest was 15. Do you admit or deny that that happened?
I'll take your presentation as accurate.
All right, well, I have to say all of these cases have been adjudicated. As I said, they are not gotcha questions. These incidents were national news. And as director of the FBI, you have access to all of this information. So in 2022, Peyton Grendon walked into a supermarket in a black neighborhood in Buffalo, New York, and started shooting. He murdered 10 people that day. And on September 10th, your friend Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Tyler Robinson has been taken into custody and charged, but also on that day, Desmond Holley, a 16-year-old white male, shot and injured 2 students at a high school in Colorado before killing himself. And according to the Anti-Defamation League, he had a fascination with mass shootings and white supremacy. So do you admit to, deny these facts?
Those happened.
Okay. Your predecessor, former FBI Director Christopher Wray, said that one of the most dangerous concerns is that racially motivated violent extremism, especially white supremacists, has been the biggest chunk of our domestic terrorism cases and is responsible for the most lethal attacks over the last decade. Do you admit or deny, A, that he said this?
I'll let the record reflect that. Whatever he said was what he said.
All right, and do you agree?
That there is racially motivated crimes being committed in America, yes.
Yes, especially white supremacists, which is the biggest chunk of our domestic terrorism. I'm glad that you said this. So last week, President Trump was asked if there were extremists on both the left and the right. He was actually asked this by Fox and Friends, and his exact words were, I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see
Johnson that the only reason the list was not released by DOJ and FBI was, quote, because of who's on that list. Upon your confirmation, you promised that, quote, there will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, no stone left unturned. And anyone from the prior or current Bureau who undermines this will be swiftly pursued. This spring, you ordered hundreds of agents to pore over all the Epstein files, but not to look for more clues about the money network or the network of human traffickers. You pulled these agents from their regular counterterrorism or drug trafficking duties to work around the clock, some of them sleeping at their desks, to conduct a frantic search to make sure Donald Trump's name and image were flagged and redacted wherever they appeared, whether an email, a text, a letter, an interview, a photograph, or a video. In May, Attorney General Bondi reportedly told Trump that his name had indeed appeared multiple times throughout the Epstein files. And not long thereafter, in July, you and the Attorney General released a memo claiming that, quote, no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. In a few short months, how did you go from being a crusader for accountability and transparency for the Epstein files to being a part of the conspiracy and cover-up? The answer is simple. You said it yourself, because of who's on that list. Donald Trump's relationship with Epstein over the years is well documented. A week ago, the Oversight Committee released Trump's disturbing birthday book, Note to Epstein, written over a drawing of a woman's naked body, referring to a, quote, wonderful secret. The Oversight Committee obtained the note from the Epstein estate, not from the FBI, raising questions again of whether the FBI has been withholding documents. While you're unleashing the FBI to cater to Trump's desire to shut down the Epstein inquiry, the first 9 months of the Trump presidency have seen a spate of political violence and domestic terror events. We saw deadly attacks on political figures on both the left and the right. The brutal assassination of Minnesota Democratic House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, and the attempted murder of Democratic State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, who miraculously survived a combined 17 gunshots. We saw an arsonist set Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence on fire. And of course, last week, we saw the horrific, cold-blooded assassination of Charlie Kirk in Utah that has shaken the nation. 1 minute after Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck, a 16-year-old shooter in Evergreen, Colorado, radicalized by white supremacist ideology online, opened fire and critically wounded 2 other students at Evergreen High School. We've seen lethal anti-Semitic violence, including the murder of 2 young Israeli embassy staffers just blocks from the Capitol, and then in the attack on a gathering of Jewish people in support of hostages held in Gaza in Boulder in June. We've seen continued mass shootings at schools, like the domestic terror incident at a Catholic school in Minneapolis last month, which killed 2 children and wounded 18 others. And in August, a man fired more than 500 bullets at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, killing a police officer who was a Marine veteran and a father. People like Melissa Hortman and Charlie Kirk should be able to participate in politics as elected officials or active citizens without being shot down in cold blood in the United States of America. People should also be able to go to elementary school, to middle school, to high school, to work, to the mall, and to church without being shot down in explosions of gun violence. The important position at the FBI requires a leader who puts public safety and national security and the rule of law first. I'm afraid, Director Patel, you've given us reason to believe you've used the powers of the FBI to serve Donald Trump and his agenda of partisan retribution. You've broken your promise not to do that. You've betrayed Jeffrey Epstein's victims and survivors. You've turned your back on the career law enforcement officers of the FBI, and as a result, you've left all of us less safe than before. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.